Good evening, everyone. This is Brittnei Barnes, here to present on curriculum design for Chapter 6. I decided to use a picto chart, and I didn't want to level up to pay, so I'm just going to present it like this. And hopefully that'll be a Web 2.0 tool. So here we go. Curriculum design. We're going to go through the highlights. First, we're going to go through myths about education, then the big ideas, components of it, sources of it, the framework, design dimension, the three types of designs, all the criticisms of the designs, and the shadow curriculum. So David Orr cited 4 myths, and some of them I do to an extent believe that some of these designs, they kind of affirm that education can reduce ignorance, it can help people manage society and the earth, and it can increase wisdom and foster upward mobility. I think that some of these things people really do believe about education, and so we try to do these things through our curriculum, but he says that they're myths. Our big ideas are given by Kieran Egan, who's cited by Ornstein and Hunkins. And basically, each idea has a question. There are 3 big ideas: socialization, academic, and development. These big ideas are basically the purpose of education, but do we create or select a design that addresses current needs and behaviors, or that allow for future possibilities? Do we accommodate students for now or the future? Academically, what's important? What should we teach our kids? What should be designed, or what kind of curriculum should accommodate them? And developmentally, how do they process knowledge and gain literacy? So curriculum design has 4 components, or 4 questions, 4 essential questions. And the objectives answer the question, what should be done? The content is what subject matter should be included. Learning experiences, what strategies or activities should be incorporated? And evaluation, what methods and materials could be used to assess the result? So these questions answer everything from the beginning of creating a curriculum all the way up to the end. And here we have a quote saying, we should consider philosophical and learning theories. So we should incorporate all aspects, or as many aspects as we can, but they should be based on our basic beliefs. What do we believe as educators, and how can we put that into a curriculum? So here are our origins: science, society, morals, knowledge, and the learner. So curriculum designers must clarify. So again, we must know what we believe in order to create. What do you do to create? You start, and what do you start with? Well, decide which one of these 5 best fits you, or which parts of these 5 best fits you. Science teaches how to learn. Society is socialization or indoctrination. Are we trying to just make our kids social and interact with each other, collaborate, cooperate, or do we have an agenda to make them one way or the other? Morals, of course, Jiminy Cricket, always let your conscience be your guide. Knowledge is power, and learning from the learner. So science teaches how to learn. They prioritize the scientific method, problem solving, thinking strategies, metacognition, thinking about your thinking, answer and proof. Oh, that's your answer. How can you prove it? All of these things are science sources. So the curriculum will be influenced by this design and would guide students on how to think. So the curriculum will teach kids how to think. This curriculum dealing with society, basically, am I getting my kids to talk to each other, or am I trying to get them to conform to something? So if you believe in the social, that the school's purpose is to incorporate the interests of the local community and the larger society, or if you believe in the political, it's always going to be difficult to get them on one accord. So the political aspect of it is more messy because the conservatives believe back to basics. Liberals believe upward mobility. Where do we hear that? In David Orr's Myths About Education. And radicals believe that success is for everyone, regardless of their background. So curriculum workers influenced by this believe that society's current state should be the guide. So basically, if you're coming up with a curriculum, you should look at how society is politically and socially and come up with a curriculum that addresses that. Morals, always let your conscience be your guide. This is very spiritual. This is very holistic. This is very peace on earth. This is where we see teaching kids how to be good people, teaching kids that, yes, you can master content, but we want them to be tolerant, compassionate, and we want them to be noble versus scientific, rational, and materialistic. So they believe in lasting truths, ranking subjects, knowledge, and spirituality. So spiritual curriculum designers ask questions about the nature of the world, the purpose of life, and all of those tree-hugging types of concepts. Knowledge is power. If you think that knowledge is where or what people should know or why people should learn, why should people learn? To get knowledge, to make people smart. Well, then that's where you belong for curriculum. Curriculum workers influenced by this follow Plato, that the most valuable knowledge stimulates. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what knowledge is of the most worth? For whom is this knowledge of value? And what intellectual skills must be taught to enable common and uncommon knowledge to be utilized for individual and social good? So you have to ask yourself these questions by Ornstein and Hudkins, if you believe this. The learner is the source of a curriculum for this one. So their priorities are psychological emphasis, how do minds create meaning, and brain research. So you're learning from watching children, you're learning from studying your students, you're learning from patterns that you see in kids and in adolescents. So they are the ones who are teaching you, okay, well, I see that she does this or leans toward that, or she responds this way or that way. Okay, let me see how I can design my curriculum to accommodate her. But if you're examining one student or two students, who's to say that your next class next year will be that way? So anyway, learning from the learner is what this source is. So I just gave a commentary about which way is the best way. Each source has its own unique flavor, but it's how society being a source has implications for fusing multiple perspectives. Each source either explicitly or implicitly implies that it needs to be merged with one another. All of these sources need one another in some way, shape, or form to make a whole child. So it's almost like you need everything to supplement each other to make it complementary, I guess. I'll skip to the last paragraph. Any design, whether it be fashion or curriculum, must take the consumer into account. How will the consumer wear the design? What will the consumer do while wearing the design? And what will the design say to others when they see the consumer wearing it? Will the design achieve the desired reaction? So when you create a curriculum, what is it going to look like? What is your overall purpose for creating it? What will other people say when they see your curriculum or when they see it being enacted? How will the students interact with it, and how will they feel, or how will it affect them as they are actually taking part in it? So it's almost like wearing a piece of clothing. The conceptual framework is either vertical or horizontal. I'm sure we've all heard of this, but vertical alignment means that objectives are the same in each grade level, but they become more complex, just like for the examples given. And for horizontal alignment, it means that you collaborate with other people, maybe on your grade level, but in different content areas. So our design dimensions are scope, sequence, continuity, integration, articulation, and balance. Scope deals with how deep and wide you should go. Sequence is cumulative and continuous. Continuity is curriculum's components should repeat themselves to ensure mastery. So if you do it over and over again, if you do it enough, you'll remember. Integration is trying to link everything as much as possible to create better meaning. Articulation deals with vertical and horizontal interrelatedness, which is almost like a perpendicular approach because they meet at cross points. And balance is weighing each element of the design appropriately, how much each thing is worth. So with scope, like I said, how deep does something go? How wide does something go? It can be in a year, over multiple years, or broken into units. What should be covered? How long should I cover it? How much do the students really need to know? Then that kind of gets into hidden curriculum too, because it's like, if you say, well, how much do they need to know? Then you might miss something that might be ending up as a null curriculum. And it depends on how comfortable you are with certain things. Cognitive domain is most heavily affirmed. Sequence, it builds concepts, almost like building blocks. Should it be logically based, or should it be on how students process? That's a psychological question. Simple to complex, prerequisite, whole to part, and chronological are 4 sequential aspects of that dimension. And they're self-explanatory pretty much. Continuity deals with mastery. Seeing something over and over again will help you to master it. So if I know that in 6.1 in 6th grade, I'm going to have to cite evidence, and 7th grade is going to become more complex, but I'll become better at it because it's the same thing the next year. Tyler states it's necessary to see there's recurring and continuing opportunities to practice and develop skills. Small typo. Don't shoot me. It's been a long week. Integration is just linking all things together as much as possible, horizontal relationships, and the lines between the subject content should be erased. Articulation, that perpendicular relationship between vertical and horizontal. How does curriculum happening now relate to what they will encounter later on? Okay, and balance is weighing each one appropriately. In a balanced curriculum, the students can acquire and use knowledge in ways that advance their personal, social, and intellectual goals. We want them to be well-rounded. So we have 3 basic designs: subject, learner, and problem-centered. Subject, discipline, broad fields, all of those go into subject. The learner-centered deals with the whole child, and problem-centered deals with problem-solving in different ways. Each category deals with those big ideas. So subject design, textbooks, accountability. The teacher is trained in one subject. It's organized around essential knowledge. And Henry Morrison says that the subject matter curriculum contributes most to literacy. That's an opinion, but subject design, this is what you should know in English. So I'm going to teach this to you in English, and this is what you need to master in English. And if you don't, I'm going to be held accountable. Discipline designs the students learn for intelligence. They comprehend and conceptualize and learn to acquire information. So you're basically learning just to be smart. Broad fields of design is broadening your horizons. You're experiencing all these different things to broaden. And so interdisciplinary is their focus, and it combines 2 or more relationships, or 2 or more related subjects rather. And it's organized into clusters. Social studies and English. If you're talking about Roman social studies, I can read a novel or an article about Rome. And they use curricular webs for that. Correlation design, it separates subjects, requires links to avoid fragmentation. You don't want kids to learn things in bits and pieces. That's what Taba says. So to give them a holistic picture, you try to correlate and draw comparisons and similarities between things so that kids can understand. And teachers plan lessons cooperatively, horizontally, I'm sure. Now, process design was where you learn methods and procedures. So you process things. It's developmental, and it develops intellectual character and shapes intellectual behavior. They should be able to analyze reality and learn the process of knowledge acquisition. We have a quote here from Mr. Leotard, who says, "We engage in process not to reach consensus, but to search for instabilities." So that's that hermeneutic discussion. Students look at something and question it and say, but let me poke a hole here, let me poke a hole there, and see what'll happen if I poke a hole in that argument, to always have something that's evolving. Learner-centered, again, is just basically focusing on the student. The child-centered design is where students are active. They have classroom opportunities to explore, and it's not necessarily organizing subjects, more so around the child and their experiences and social problems and problem solving. Experiences is all about their interests. I'm still a little foggy on learners' interests because they can be so vast and so vague, but the experience is the starting point, and the children's needs cannot be anticipated, so you're basically on the cuff. It's really radical more than romantic, but with radical design, their main goal is just make everything equal for everybody. If the haves have it, the have-nots should have it too. And so basically, we question everything about what we do and everything that our government does so that we can emancipate or free ourselves to become upwardly mobile. I'm a teacher. I'm going to tell you things to make you aware of where you are and how the world is so that you can question the world that you live in and possibly work for change. So they're open to planned and unplanned curriculum. Humanistic design embraces confluence, which I define as emotional intelligence, because you embrace your emotional aspect of it, but you use it and you use your emotion to add or contribute to your intelligence. So you know how you feel, you're in touch with your feelings, and so then you're able to have self-control and contribute more to a classroom environment. The subject needs to influence students' lives, so it has to be relevant, and they experience through connection and questions, imagination, and emotion. Not only do students think about how the content relates to them and others, but they think about the implications for it as well. How does this affect the future? How does this affect the past? How does this affect everything around me? And problem-centered design reminds me of like a home ec class. It's just life situations that you are able to encounter in school so that you can deal with it in the real world. So that in the real world, we have less people who are having nervous breakdowns and anxiety attacks about things because you were able to deal with it in school. And the Reconstructionists foster social action, and basically they're trying to develop the social and political aspect of students so that they can become social and political in the real world. So they analyze community problems and address humanity's problems. So everyone's a critic. For subject design, they say it prevents individualization and de-emphasizes the learner. In discipline, they say the schools ignore information that can't be classified, like aesthetic knowledge. Broad fields lacks depth because it's so broad. Correlation design, the teachers must plan cooperatively. We know how that can go sometimes. And it's impractical for class schedules. The process design, students have to do more than analyze, and they must unravel to process. And the child center, it contradicts the view of primarily content-driven curriculum. So basically, it goes against the traditional grain. Experience center ignores information about development and growth, and off-the-cuff curriculum, which, you know, some of us teachers, we off-the-cuff, but our test scores, they off-the-cuff too. And radical is overtly political and sometimes aggressive. And for humanistic design, teachers must change their mindset, which is hard to do sometimes. And it overemphasizes the individual, all about one person and the self, ignoring the needs of the society. For life situations, the teacher lacks preparation because textbooks and other materials impede implementation. And teachers lack preparation because how am I going to anticipate a life situation? And Reconstructionists, it may interfere with school or community agenda. So you may want the students to be political and social and economically sound, but what if the school doesn't want that? What if they think that's too radical? What if the community can't re-elect Senator so-and-so or school board member so-and-so because you have students questioning them in the school board meetings? So these are things to consider. So in the shadows, underneath the designs and the plans are things that aren't said and taught. Okay, so that's where the shadow curricula comes in. Teachers are ultimately in control of what is taught and what is skipped. If something makes me uncomfortable, I can just say, well, I'll just touch on it, but I won't go into depth into it. And so I touched on it in the curriculum, but I really didn't go through that depth. And that's the point of scope and sequence. So they control how long material is taught, how it's taught, and what depth students study it. I can say, well, I'm just going to lecture on it today, and they're not going to do any activity with it tomorrow. And they are also influenced by the outside people, the people who need to be reelected, the principal who needs to look good, the assistant principal who needs to this or that. So the agenda is vast, and those can contribute as well to shadows or shadow curriculum. Here are my references. And I am trying to get out of this so I can be, okay, stop it. So I'm